afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this tropically beautiful, warm day in Detroit. It is, though, compared to yesterday and the day before. But we're here today to talk a little about the National Alliance for Audition Support. We will talk about the effort. We got together last year and talked about kind of the concept. Since then, a year has passed. We've done a lot of programming. And I would love to start the session by showing a bit of a video. And after that, I'll introduce my wonderful panelists and we'll have a bit of a conversation. Let's see if what I say is true. It is not.
Oh, there we go. Okay, you're getting there.
Oh. For a group of accomplished young musicians, the road to Carnegie Hall starts in Miami Beach. They've come from around the country to take part in a new program helping minority musicians make it into major symphony orchestras.
I remember knowing that it was different for me as the person that I am and the skin that I'm in to do the thing that I was doing.
African Americans make up less than 2% of the musicians in orchestras nationwide. Latinos, less than 3%.
I've had plenty of cases where people have told me that I won't get very far because of the color of my skin and because of the stigma behind it.
Why is it that there are so few African Americans and Latinos in orchestra?
Well, you know, we're an art form that came here from Europe. You know, our unions were segregated until 1964, the musicians' union, either a black union or a white union, and there was active discrimination.
To give these musicians a leg up, the program, the National Alliance for Audition Support, focuses on just that, the all-important audition.
Tell me about the audition, what that's like for you.
I think just the word alone scares a lot of us. It's a really nerve-wracking experience, but at the same time, it's important that you're able to do that.
So the program emphasizes mental preparation and resilience.
It's not just, oh, I need to practice more, or worrying whether you have what it takes or not.
There's a seminar on how to focus with built-in distractions and mock auditions, where candidates audition behind a screen, just as they would in a real tryout, heard but not seen. So the focus is on music, not the person.
You're trying to prove to somebody that you can blend in an orchestra, but you also have individuality in your playing.
Kind of like, you know, giving your all in a basketball game, knowing that, you know what, I may or may not win, but I couldn't have played any smarter, any harder.
Knowledge these young artists hope will help them realize their dreams and change the color of classical music.
So just a bit of a recap about what NAAS is and the work that it's been doing, and we'll all tag team on some of the updates and the description. So National Alliance for Audition Support is a new and unprecedented national initiative aimed to increase diversity in American orchestras. It is an artist-centric effort that was launched with the support from the Mellon Foundation and in partnership between the League of American Orchestras, the New World Symphony Orchestra, and the Sphinx organization, advised by and supported by the expertise from a group of dedicated, wonderful musicians, orchestral musicians, who are helping us shape the program and help us make it a program that really centers around the experience of the musician. The program itself consists of a variety of different subsections, so to speak. It offers mentoring. It offers audition preparation, formal audition preparation, including training, financial support, as well as mock auditions and previews. In fact, to be specific, earlier during this week, on Wednesday, we had all day of auditions. Approximately 55 musicians got together, pre-selected from a much larger national pool. They all went through a formal screened audition, and they were listened to by representatives from about 40 different orchestras, or 45 actually, to be exact. And it's all aimed at kind of providing that preparation and equipping these young musicians to pursue their careers, to ultimately gain placement, hopefully, in professional orchestras. This is a 4-year initiative. It's a 4-year grant, $1.8 million grant. We're working with the Mellon Foundation, and they've really been a thought partner to us beyond a supporter, because I think this has been very much a passion for the foundation and a really authentic area of focus. So we're really lucky to have that kind of a conglomerate of partners. I should also talk a bit about the Artist Council. The Artist Council is an advisory body of musicians who, if anyone from the Artist Council is in the audience, would you please stand so that we can recognize you? Hi, Beverly. And John Lofton. Wonderful. So from the very beginning, this effort began with us thinking about how to make this program different and what will really set it aside from deserving previous efforts that really, I'm sure they've made a difference, but ultimately they haven't made a difference to the extent that I think all of us in this room would like to see. So these members of the Artist Council are working with us every step along the way. They're helping us look at these issues of underrepresentation, not only from the standpoint of administrators and or philanthropists, but really from the standpoint of musicians who have all made it on their respective paths and the journeys that they had to travel in order to make it. So this is a dedicated group of mentors, musicians, artists who themselves have a vision for this program and have been giving of their time generously, and we're certainly very grateful for that. I also want to recognize the leadership and the commitment from 43 orchestral partners. When we originally began this initiative and thought about it more conceptually, we had hoped to have 10 to kind of get the program started. But I'm excited to say that there's now 43, and each one of these orchestras not only contributes financially to the fund portion of the National Audition for Alliance Support, but really they're also thought partners. And have been there to kind of look at existing systems, help us examine them, help us find different and better ways to really make a difference. So we're certainly grateful because we really, I think as a group, we very much believe that this process doesn't go anywhere unless we're all going together, and this is one way to go together. I thought what might be really helpful to kind of talk a bit about what NAAS has done over the past year, and who better to do that than Johnnia Stigall, who's been our program manager and has been working really closely with each one of the musicians, but also all of the orchestral partners, as well as being a wonderful liaison to all of the partners who are involved in the effort. So I'll pass the baton and let you take us through the work you've been doing.
Yes, so just a little over a year ago, we came to you guys to announce this program, and so I think the purpose of us being here is to share what we've done over the past year. So financial support, this is one of the main components of the National Alliance for Audition Support. This is very practical, direct support to musicians. We have 3 grant types. We have audition grants, instrument grants, and substitute musician grants. And we awarded 54 of those in 2018. And I think it's important to share that the granting portion of this program only started in August. And so this is 54 grants just over the past 5 months. Yes, and so the audition grants, again, this is very practical. This is flights to auditions. This is a flight for a cello to the audition. This is hotel. If you're missing work to take an audition, reimbursement for that. If you're missing work to practice for an audition, or if you're traveling to work with a specialist for the audition you're preparing for, financial support for that. And so we awarded 39 of those in the past several months. We had 25 recipients, and the average award is about a little over $1,000, just to cover primarily hotel and travel, but there are a lot of related expenses that we do cover. Yes, so we've sent musicians all over the country to major orchestras to take auditions, many principal auditions, and the orchestras we sent people to are listed here, and I think it's creating a really incredible positive momentum of people being able to take as many auditions as they're prepared to take, and if it doesn't work out, being able to go right back out there and take the next audition without having to financially recover from the one they just took. And so instrument grants. So these are grants to cover expenses like strings, bowery hair, flute head joints, cleanings, things that help musicians have their instruments also audition ready for auditions. We awarded 10 of those, $17,000, and also very, very helpful and useful for musicians. So the substitute musician grants, I think this is something really special about this program. Because I think occasionally musicians will be invited to sub with orchestras, but to accept a subbing opportunity, they lose money in the process. And so we cover housing, we cover travel, to make this a good opportunity for musicians. We don't award as many of those, but it's still very, very helpful and useful. And so the audition intensives, this is what was shown in the NBC video. So we had 3 of those last year with 36 musicians, and these are hosted by New World in Miami. I'm always very excited to go visit New World for the project, of course. And so the focus of these is the performance psychology training, also mock auditions and lessons with faculty members. And so the first one we did in June, this one was invite only, but we had really incredible musicians that we worked with from all across the country. And I think with this one, we were just trying to figure out exactly how can this be most useful for musicians. And we had really incredible faculty, including Joy Payton-Stevens, who was on our Artist Council as well. And so the second audition intensive that we did, which was just last month, or 2 months ago, I guess now, in December, this was 4 musicians were added to an existing New World audition intensive. So that was another format that we tried. And so the winds and brass audition intensive, this one was really exciting because I think there were a lot of winds and brass players that felt kind of out of the circle of Sphinx things, because I think people sometimes assume we only work with strings. So there were so many, so excited musicians that applied and participated in this. We are also very happy to have Alberto Suarez from the Artist Council and faculty for this event as well. So the audition previews, this is most directly connected to the SOPA program, the Sphinx Orchestral Partners auditions. So we just did this on Wednesday. It was a very long day, but I think connecting musicians with really incredible opportunities. So an overview of what SOPA is it's a blind audition. It's not a mock audition, it's a blind audition, and all musicians of color playing a real audition, and representatives from orchestras from all across the country. And if an orchestra is interested in a musician, they can take a professional recording from that blind audition, take it back to the principals of their home orchestra to connect with other opportunities. And so we just did this on Wednesday, and we had over 94 applicants, which was we were not expecting it, but I think it was a good problem to have so many applicants, and a huge increase in musicians and also participating orchestras and organizations. And so these were the orchestras and organizations that were here this week. We're talking principals, music directors, just listening to all musicians of color to connect them with opportunities to be successful as orchestral musicians. And so that was 2018. It was a busy year, but I think we were able to support so many musicians and create so many opportunities.
Great, and thank you for that, Johnnia. That was a great update. And thank you for your scrupulous and dedicated work. We know that it takes a lot of coordination and patience and perseverance, and you've certainly done that. I'd like to now invite my fellow panelists to kind of identify themselves, talk to us a bit about each portion of what you do as it relates to this program, to kind of give a fuller picture of what NAAS is, and then I'd love to try and facilitate a conversation with those in the audience. Cassie?
Sure. Hello, everyone. I'm Cassidy Fitzpatrick. I'm Vice President for Musician Advancement at the New World Symphony, and I've been fortunate enough to be in conversations throughout this whole year with Johnnia and AFA and our Artist Council and my fellow colleagues here, just trying to put together a comprehensive program that incorporates a lot of direct feedback from musicians, and especially pre-professional musicians, about what they need. And so it's been really great to work with Johnnia on, when we get a question, finding the answer to that question and building a program and a model that really works for as many people as possible. I will let JT talk about the auditions intensives because that's really his area of expertise, so go ahead.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm JT Kane. I am the Dean of Visiting Faculty and Orchestra Manager with the New World Symphony. So my role in the NAAS auditions is finding the coaches that come to Miami. We've been very fortunate to have a lot of really great coaches come in and just been very excited about being there. So, and I work with Johnnia directly on just essentially the overall, just the 4 days that happen in Miami, the schedules and things like that. So the schedule basically is the first day we do the performance psychology. We do a group session with Noah Kageyama from Juilliard, who has the Bulletproof Musician, Optimal Training Program. And so that's a group session with him. You saw in the video the crying baby on the screen next to the violinist. It's stuff like that. It's an amazing session. And then he goes into doing individual sessions with each musician. Day 2 consists of mock auditions, where we really make it seem as if it is a real life live audition for a professional orchestra. All the panelists are behind a screen. Each musician presents a list of an audition. It doesn't have to, we don't set the list. They can choose whatever they want to play, and they will play it. And each of the panelists, each of the coaches, will actually write comments. So typically there's 3 to 4 coaches behind the screen. They'll write comments for each musician. Afterwards, we will distribute those comments to each individual musician, where they will, on the following day, so day 3, are individual lessons. They'll take those comments to their individual lessons and work specifically on those comments, the advice of the coaches, whatever they have to say. And then you can also take lessons, obviously, with your specific instrument. We also offer lessons with other coaches for other instruments if you want to take it with one of them. That's day 4, and then we do a Q&A session, a panel session with the coaches and everyone that's involved. And it's basically just the coaches talk about their successes, their failures, their path to where they've gotten to. And then we open it up to questions for all the musicians, and it's really informative. It's a great 4 days, and yeah, that's what I do.
Okay. Hi, I'm John Kieser. I'm the provost for New World Symphony. I just sit back and watch these two work. No, but I was thinking about looking critically at what we're doing, and also thinking about where we need to go, and also thinking about partnerships. One aspect, actually, JT, you forgot to mention, is there's also a social aspect with these audition intensives, and what we found is that it's actually creating a network within the participants of the audition intensive that seems to last beyond and stretch beyond the actual few days they are together. And we found that this has been incredibly helpful in terms of everybody supporting each other. So there's a real camaraderie that's built not only between the participants, but also between the participants and the coaches. Some of those kind of coaching mentor relationships have extended beyond the actual audition intensive. In terms of what's next, we're looking at soon launching an online component for this, and it's sort of a audition masterclass where through distance learning capabilities we'll be able to connect some major centers together and have both faculty and participants in each area. Say, well, we'll leave to where exactly to a little bit later because we're in the process of lining up some partners for that, but it will be sort of a round robin type of thing where the participants perform excerpts and are critiqued by faculty in each locations. And in terms of partnerships, maybe I don't know if you're going to talk about sort of the collection of working group from the orchestras. One of the things that we do need is some sort of baseline data in terms of auditions for orchestras. So we're looking at working with partner orchestras to try and bring together some data so we know where we're starting and where we're going to. And beyond that, the next possibility is to bring on board also some of the higher education institutions. So that's kind of what I'm sort of thinking about as we go forward.
Thanks. I'm Karen Yair. I'm VP of Knowledge, Learning and Leadership at the League of American Orchestras. And for those who aren't familiar with the League, we have 700 member orchestras across the United States. We first started talking with our membership about this program a couple of years ago, I think. And, you know, many of our members are at various stages of engagement and action around equity, diversity, and inclusion. And I think this was, you know, many of them seized on this as a really tangible opportunity to get involved and to show that they were committed in actionable ways to this agenda. So as Afa mentioned, 43 of our members are currently signed up. And you know, I think they've started to benefit from the program, not just in terms of feeling that they're part of a collective nationwide action around EDI, but also starting to make connections with the program around raising awareness of audition opportunities that they have and making sure that those opportunities are known to the musicians that Sphinx are connected to. So the partnership's starting to grow in new ways. Next steps for us are to expand the pool of members who are involved in the program. And, you know, I think seeing the evidence of the impact that's been made so far and hearing the stories of the musicians that have been involved in the way that we've seen in the fabulous press generated by this program is really going to help us to drive that engagement.
And one thing I forgot about partnerships, I'm sorry, I guess we should never come to these things without some kind of notes in front of you, but also we have been very fortunate to have involved with these conversations in terms of the planning and as we're rolling these things out with the American Federation of Musicians. Thank you, Rochelle Skolnick, for all your hours, and also Meredith Snow from ICSUM, and also ROPE has been involved too. It's been extremely helpful to have their voices at the table.
Absolutely, that's very critical. So from a standpoint of the Alliance, while we are sort of the core operational members of this effort, of the consortium, we certainly believe wholeheartedly, and I think our actions illustrate that as well, that we do need to have everyone involved. Not only the artists who are kind enough to really give of their time and their expertise to advise us, but also various other advisory bodies who will help inform this process. We are learning a lot as this is occurring. And by no means do we presume to have all the questions. We're learning a lot from the participating musicians. We're understanding their perspectives. We're learning more about the needs, and those things that we may have presumed prior to starting the work may no longer be true. So very much having the unions represented in the conversations is critical. We also now have an advisory body from CEOs of all groups of orchestras who are also looking at this with us. Everything from a standpoint of tracking now and doing a more formal and better job of tracking the auditions and how their audition pool actually looks, so that we can really look at it again from 4 years from now and see whether the numbers have increased, not only in terms of placement, but also in terms of artists showing up for auditions and actually going through the entire process. Because in order to really create an effective ecosystem, we know it'll take all of us. And as I look in the audience beyond the lights, I can see that we have musicians and administrators. I also see some of the grantees who've participated in a program. So certainly having your voices infuse this conversation, I think, is going to be really terrific. We have two ways of asking questions. I think there's microphones on either side. You know the spiel because you've been here. And there's also Slido. So whatever manner is most comfortable to you, please go ahead. Think about a question and channel it our way so that we can kind of begin conversing about it.
We already have a number of questions on Slido, so thank you all for sending your questions.
Great, so maybe we'll start there.
So maybe we can start here. There are a number that I will sort of clump together that ask how are we defining success as NAAS, and also for some specific statistics on the performance of NAAS participants, which I believe Johnnia has information on. So maybe we can talk about what our success looks like.
Sure. I think it's a really legitimate question to ask what success looks like. And I think I would probably be most transparent if I said we don't quite know that. Ultimately, in our minds, success beyond the 4 years that we're certainly piloting this it results in our orchestras looking like our communities. That would be ultimate success. I think we all wish that. I think we all think that for orchestras, not only to survive, but to thrive, that's an imperative thing. At the same time, we're realistic, and kind of from last night's keynote, we know that there's a timeline that needs to be considered. And I think to begin with, for us, success would mean really exposing as many musicians as possible to the opportunities that are contained within NAAS, and really to begin seeing some placement. that would be success. And beyond that, we understand that this program helps with placement. It helps musicians equip themselves. But beyond that, we know that orchestras themselves do need to work on and need to consider their own climate and thinking about ways to imagine themselves as inclusive and thoughtful institutions who do welcome diversity and not just sort of nod and say that it's a good thing. So ultimately, I think here at NAAS, we do believe that those things do go together hand in hand. I think making a difference in that perspective and that actual manifestation of programming and orchestras and how they welcome diversity, I think would also be success. But Johnnia, I don't know if you want to talk a little about numbers from that standpoint.
Yeah, so after a musician is awarded an audition grant specifically, they have to return a report saying how they did, what they learned. And I'd say, I believe it's around a little under 60% that have gone out to take audition. They haven't advanced, but many are making it to semifinals, to finals. We haven't had a person win a job yet, but I personally don't see that as not being successful because I think the musicians that are out there taking auditions I think they're learning through the process as well. And I'd love to hear from if there are any musicians out there that have received a NAAS grant that would be able to share a bit about their experiences with the auditions and how it's been helpful.
We'd love to hear from you.
You're right in the front.
Please identify yourself.
Yes. My name is Blake Anthony Johnson, and I am a cellist in New World Symphony, also a NAAS grant awardee. And I guess my experience and a lot of people who have taken the grants for auditions is kind of like a second win because obviously financial hurdles. I'm a cellist, so I buy 2 plane tickets every single time I go. And at least for my close friends, like a lot of us have been able to kind of do the circuit, which means like you take 2 or 3 auditions back to back. And, especially for a cellist, that's a huge financial feat. But for me and some of my colleagues, we have done way better with that hurdle gone. So when I say way better, I just mean kind of like building the momentum. So like doing semifinals and then getting finals and then being the last man standing, but they don't hire. So like it's definitely, I feel like gives you a lot of momentum in terms of taking as many as you want. But I don't know if I answered anything that you asked. But
That's great. That's just helpful to hear. I see a lot of musicians in the audience. I think it's just great to hear from firsthand experience and just your journey.
So we have another bunch of questions about what does it mean to be an orchestra partner of NAAS, and what are the expectations of those orchestras as orchestra partners?
Absolutely. Feel like taking it, John?
Well, what it means to be an orchestra partner, maybe actually I should defer to our colleague
let's
from the League of American Orchestras.
I think we can answer that together.
Yeah, maybe so.
The major contribution is a financial one. That contribution is scaled according to the budget of the orchestra in question.
I think beyond that also, we're starting having conversations about developing data, but also I think long term, there needs to be certain level of advocacy that also happens with the orchestras. So, we're at the very beginning of this relationship. So, all I can say is maybe watch this space and see how things further develop in terms of the area of things like advocacy for maybe some different procedures. Let's put it at that.
Great.
I'd also say that it's a part of the orchestra's work, and I think it makes it very tangible and immediate. But a lot of our colleagues are looking at, what they need to do themselves as well as contributing to this program, and the issues that orchestras face around their own cultures and traditions, and what change needs to happen internally is an essential counterpoint to this work. And I think the one drives the other. So I think that's an additional value of participation.
Well, I'm also going to just ask you to talk a little bit about the new Mellon Grant that is available for orchestras.
The catalyst.
Thank you, yeah. Yes, we just launched last month a regranting program that's funded by the Andrew W. Mellon Foundation. And the purpose of this fund is that orchestras can apply with a self-defined plan of work to engage an EDI consultant to assess where they currently are in terms of equity, diversity and inclusion, to identify the next steps that they could take in progressing, and to, whether to put together a plan, whether to forge new partnerships, whether to come to a new understanding of the demographics of their community, any of that kind of foundational work that's defined by orchestras themselves to enable them to engage more genuinely and equitably with the communities that they serve. That's what this program's about. And if anyone would like to talk about it with me more afterwards, I'm around afterwards, and I've got some handouts in my bag. So thank you, John, for the question.
Perfect. I think we have someone lined up. Come on over.
Hi, I'm Jan. I'm a violinist. And I wanted to have a question about the NAAS Audition Intensive, but I also wanted to share my experience because I was fortunate to be one of the ones invited to the inaugural Audition Intensive. And I must say, I mean, for me, it was incredibly helpful because at that time I had been out of school for quite a long time. And in my undergrad program, there wasn't any kind of class that was about audition preparation for orchestras. There wasn't orchestral excerpt class, nothing like that. So as I embarked in my newest kind of endeavor, which is going back to grad school and a fellowship with the Cincinnati Symphony, I have to take auditions, and I needed to find a way to get myself ready for that. And I think that the audition intensive has really set me up well for that, and so thank you. What I want to know is you mentioned that the first one was by invitation, but what can we expect in the future as far as the application process for the future intensives? How is that going to look like?
Absolutely. Johnnia, would you like?
Well, that's a great question. Well, we're hoping to announce the next NAAS intensive within the next few weeks, to occur within the next few months. At least for the December intensives, that was the first time we opened applications. And so we received recordings and also resumes that were reviewed by a panel, and musicians were selected that way. But as you mentioned, for the first group, they were all selected from the SOPA auditions that we spoke about earlier.
So what you could probably expect for everyone in the audience is the best thing to do is to follow the NAAS web page, which is on the Sphinx site. If you're here, chances are actually if you're here, you're definitely on our list, which means when the next NAAS intensive audition intensive is happening, we'll probably publicly announce it. Not only as part of the SphinxConnect group, but we'll do a mass announcement. It will be on the NAAS page. It will certainly be by audition, just similar to what happened in December, and from that selections are going to be made. We are striving to give some balance to strings versus winds and other instrument categories, because we do very much want to make it a well-rounded effort and not just limited to one particular instrument category. So short answer, watch for announcements, and if you're wondering anything, contact us.
There was also a question on the Slido that was how do I apply, period, and there's also a link on the National Alliance for Audition Support section of the Sphinx website to apply for funding. So check out the website. Johnnia did a great job putting together that application, so it should be fairly straightforward, but if you have any questions, Johnnia can help you walk through it.
Auditionalliance.org.
There you go. The other thing is that all members or all registrants, SphinxConnect registrants, are also on our email list. And Sphinx issues a monthly update and newsletter, an e-newsletter that we send out. And there is a standing NAAS corner that always lists whatever job openings we know about, whatever news about NAAS, and new opportunities for things to apply. It's kind of impossible to miss. Yes, please.
We have a question over there.
Oh, we have a question. Okay, we'll go this way and then that way to Anne. Go ahead.
Okay. Hi, my name is Francisco Joubert Bernard, and I'm a bassoon fellow at the New World Symphony. And I would like to ask, since this is a new program, I have a few questions in terms of, let me be clear and not make it. So how are the institutions that are part of this program promoting and supporting the taking of these auditions, and what communities or other institutions are they targeting for the sake of informing minorities of such resources?
Let me make sure I understood your question. You're wondering how our partners are helping to spread the word and make it relevant to their communities.
Yes.
That's a good question. The how is still being defined. The partnering institutions here on this panel are using all of their resources to spread the word out. I know New World has done a fantastic job reaching out to all of their fellow networks. And now the leagues work scrupulously with all their members to also reach out to groups of musicians, administrators, et cetera, spread the word. And of course, Sphinx does that all year round in terms of our own membership. So the idea is to involve as many institutions and communities as possible, and we feel our reach will spread greater the more orchestras will come on board and become partners, because of course it's in everyone's interest to spread the word and get the word out as widely as possible. So the reach is growing, but just evidenced by the increase in the SOPA auditions and our applications to the audition intensive, I would say it's growing pretty rapidly.
Right, and also we are putting a real priority on all the communications and public relations sides of things. That clip you saw, that was actually an NBC national news that ran coast to coast. So we are doing our best to get the word out through as many different channels as possible, whether it be social media, traditional media, or dinosaur media like television.
Yeah, even newspapers. We had features in the Washington Post and the New York Times.
Absolutely.
Correct, yeah.
So there's been a lot of national media and exposure early at the beginning of this program, and I think it continues in many ways. I think largely because the program is so unique and it's unlike its predecessors.
But then I'm going to say to you, you also have a responsibility to spread the word.
No, yeah,
everybody in this room does.
No, yeah, I bring it up because after I took the grant, and I'm very grateful for that for this program. And after the putting the word out on the social media, a lot of people, me being from Puerto Rico, a lot of people who are from Puerto Rico who just happen to be part of this minority didn't know about this thing, and they were all flooding me my messages like, hey, where can I get all these resources? And it just kind of came to my mind like why they didn't know. But I mean, I guess I'm part of the thing too. But
Actually, there's nothing more valuable than what you just said.
Yeah.
In many ways, I think probably the best exposure is that word of mouth and that opportunity to hear from fellow musicians. That's been most valuable. I think that's why there's 800 of us here as well, because I think there's nothing as powerful and meaningful as one musician telling it to their respective networks, because it's that much more personal. So in many ways, we appreciate that, you spreading the word. Thank you.
Hi.
Hello.
Wait, there's somebody before you, I think.
Oh, so sorry.
Let's have Anne tell us what's on her mind.
I'll be really quick. First, congratulations. I think that you're doing an amazing work, and the fact that you're doing it as collaboratively as you're doing it is wonderful. I'm Ann Parsons. I'm with the Detroit Symphony Orchestra, and we have had as many people know, a fellowship program for a long time. And I think the question for the group, to the audience, and to the orchestral field particularly, is how do you all work together with the orchestras that already have fellowship programs, connect the fellows, past, present, and of course future, to the work you're doing, so that this is all additive and everybody learns from one another, and all boats rise?
That's a great question. I'll start it, and then I'd welcome any voices from the choir to help. One of the ways in which we've done this, and I think you're definitely right, it's important to work with orchestras who've done this longer than we have in some ways, from the standpoint of fellowships. We've connected with all orchestras who have current or immediate past orchestral fellowships, and one of the simplest way to make the connection was through SOPA. We are offering for SOPA to be a platform to serve as a pre-audition or an actual audition for anyone who wishes to use that pool of musicians who are already prepared and coming through. I know Cincinnati and a number of other orchestras have taken advantage of that, and it's been really meaningful for all of us. What that does also is it helps us all understand the pool better. We connect some who were past fellows with those who wish to be fellows as well, so that there's literally fellowship, no pun intended that way. But I know we're very open to additional avenues and maybe more meaningful avenues to connect everyone's efforts and do it better. Anybody?
I think it's a great role that you can play, just because everyone's working in their own space, and you've shown a collaborative model, so bringing everybody together.
No, but thank you for that as well, because that just gives me another idea, another thing to add on to the agenda for these partner orchestras. Anybody who has a fellowship program, let's talk to them in a more meaningful, deeper way. Thank you.
Absolutely. Mike, please.
Hi, I'm Mike. I work for a foundation. This is sort of a follow-up to the question concerning what success looks like. I'm wondering what outcomes Mellon Foundation is looking for in reporting on their grant.
That's a great question.
We have somebody in the room
fortunate
who's
to
capable of
have
answering
one
that.
of the most ardent advocates for this program with us. Thank you, Susan, for taking
Hey,
that.
Susan.
Hi, Susan Fader from the Mellon Foundation. The Mellon Foundation, fortunately, by its nature, takes a long view. So those of you that heard our former president, Earl Lewis, talk last night, noted that if we had stopped the Mellon Mays undergraduate fellowship program after 5 years, it would have looked like failure. This is generational change. So I think you all know how many auditions arise at orchestras every year, how few retirements there are, so there's a supply and demand question. So I think success for us in the short term would look like a couple of auditions won and more substitute players and more confidence among young musicians not giving up too early on before they land those auditions. But I'm confident to say there will be a placement at least before the end of this grant period, but I think we all need to stay the course, and as a funder, we're looking for partners also to help in the longevity of this work. We are so encouraged that 43 orchestras have stepped up in the first months of this program to say that we are going to invest in this also because it works to the success of the field, not necessarily their individual orchestra.
Thank you so much, Susan. And Mike, to kind of add to that a bit, I think for all of us, we're fortunate to have that kind of long look, but also we are an impatient bunch. So we hope for us, partly success looks like partner orchestras and those who are partner orchestras in prospect. We want them to feel as urgently about it as we do and go beyond the handshake and the consensus building and really change the atmosphere enough that this becomes everyone's priority so that we can have more than one placement. Come on over.
We have a question over there.
We'll go this way. Sorry about that. So, you know what? Go ahead. I made the mistake, and then we'll go this way.
Hey, hi, my name is Rosa. I was wondering if someone could talk about the process of applying for these audition grants.
Yes, absolutely. The website.
Yeah, like we try to make it as like useful and practical and straightforward as possible. If you're invited to take an audition, you come to us and say, I've been invited to take this audition. This is the date. This is how much I'll need. Because not everyone, like if the audition's 100 miles from you, might need less than if it's 500 miles from you. You tell us how much you need. We talk about it, and then you get if it's approved, then you get a check in the mail. We try to be
fairly straightforward.
Super
very
straightforward.
practical.
I guess I was just kind of wondering if it was kind of like need-based, like with like having to show like tax, like income documentation, or if it was like audition-based, or like, well, I don't know if that makes sense.
What's the criteria?
What
the criteria is?
Yeah, I guess, of like being approved for these kind of grants.
Depending upon what aspect of it you're applying for, we will ask you to make a needs statement. If you're applying for an audition intensive, then it'll be audition based. But if you're applying for support, we will ask for some documentation and preliminary information and ways for us to kind of check every applicant. And there's a committee then that then reviews all of it. But it's, again, you go on our website, you apply, and if there are any questions, we're very quick with answering.
Thanks.
Great. Go ahead,
Thanks.
please.
My name is Brian Tyler. I live in Boston, and I play the viola. And I received a NAAS grant. Thank you very much. It was a statement to me. Don't give up. And for many of us, we need to hear that. We don't come from the resources, from the background, to be able to have a community around us that we feel supports us. I started playing in the 6th grade, and I was about 10 years old, and I started without lessons for the first 3 or 4 years. And so it wasn't until high school that I was actually able to take private lessons. It was always something that was considered to be way, my dad told me, you go to public schools, we pay taxes, there's just not that kind of sense of awareness about what it takes to be an elite musician. And then you go behind that screen where everybody is considered to be equal, and you don't feel like you belong sometimes. and you get you have to go back home and you don't get feedback from a lot of these orchestras. And so to have a community like this, it's so valuable. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you for saying it. Thank you. In many ways, in many ways that resonates so much with an earlier panel that we held on Wednesday directly following SOPA. I think we heard from Damari McGill, one of the panelists and musicians, principal flute in the Seattle Symphony. His advice to the participating musicians was, you can't give up, and don't limit yourself with auditioning only for orchestras you think will be most welcoming. Take every and any possibility and opportunity to audition. So very much that continues to be the message. Go ahead, Blake Anthony.
So this is not my question, it's just a Slido question. It says to Johnnia, what do you say of the criticism that NAAS isn't repairing the broken audition process that is aiding musicians within the same exclusive pipeline? Exclusive pipeline, sorry.
I wanted to add to that too. There's a couple of questions here about why did we choose this part of the pipeline, and I think that's something to address. And then subsequently, are we helping with the broken audition process or not? But maybe we can start with why did we pick this part of the pipeline?
Sure, we could do that. Maybe we could do that together. In no way do we think that NAAS, in the way that it's structured, is going to solve the world's problems. It's also not going to repair every wrong in our ecosystem. It can't. No single program can. We started here because we wanted to create a program that will be artist-centric, musician-centric. It came from, the impetus I think largely was understanding and illustrating that there is a large, highly qualified pool of musicians who are ready but perhaps need that extra boost, that financial support, that mentorship, that opportunity to be equipped with extra support systems, and really start there so that we could create this initial momentum and then look at, of course, other aspects that need repairing. So it isn't the solution, it is a solution with which we'll get started, and I'd love for Johnnia and Cassidy to.
I think for us, we had to look at what our institutional strengths were. None of our organizations, any of us, I think, are equipped to take on an entire system that has problems at most levels. But we each had strengths, specifically at the pre-professional level. I mean, at New World Symphony, we trained pre-professional musicians. We felt like we had something to add in a very direct and very specific way. And so we wanted to use that as a platform. And I would encourage all of you, whatever level of student or level your organization is working at, to think about people who have similar strengths to yours and maybe forming a collaboration, or maybe forming a collaboration that spans multiple levels. There are different models out there. But I think for this specific group, we looked at what resources do we have, what populations are we already working with, and how can we most effectively make change as soon as possible. So that would be.
Absolutely. And we have time for perhaps one more question after which we'll be rushed off.
I do have a fair amount from Slido if nobody wants to ask one in person. Okay, let's see. There are so many good questions. This is a question for the league about the number of orchestras who are participating. And one person asked, why doesn't every league orchestra participate? Or how are we encouraging more orchestras to participate? So maybe that's a good question to tackle.
Yeah. So I think we're very encouraged by the number of orchestras that got involved with a new program that they couldn't see in front of them. They were, leaping in before really knowing what the program would achieve. Having said that, there's obviously great scope for expansion. So, as we said, some of the things that we're doing are demonstrating the value of the work to date to our members, using all our available media and social media channels to get the word out, really starting to explore the wider benefits of the partnership beyond just the sense that orchestras are doing something to help with making a financial contribution, really starting to explore with them how they can build the kind of connections with musicians of color that will enable them to tackle their own objectives around equity, diversity, and inclusion. I think those kind of more active conversations and more active brokering of opportunities are essential to our drive to involve more members in the program. John, do you want to say something about this?
Well, and sure. I mean, we all are advocates, and I don't meet one of my former colleagues in the professional orchestra world. I was before New World, San Francisco, as a general manager there, and I don't have a conversation with my former colleagues in that area without talking about the National Alliance. And our president also, I mean, he wrote a letter to all the Group 2 orchestras to talk about the program and address some of the questions that have been coming forth here in that letter to them. But really, I think this is going to be one of these situations where it's going to take all our efforts, and you know, if you're going back to your orchestras or any group to say, okay, you know, this is something that is going to be extremely important going forward for the orchestras of this country, and just be all of us to be advocates. As I said, that's where this is going to grow. It's, you know, somebody who ran the league for many years, Ralph Black. I'm a big believer in letters and wonderful, but he used to say that in terms of fundraising, nobody actually ever. Time's up. Nobody ever got milked by sending a letter to a cow, and that you really need to be personally in front of that people and talk to them about it. So I ask you all to be advocates for this program.
Absolutely. So thank you so much to the panel. Thank you for the work that you do throughout the year. Thank you, Johnnia, for coordinating and keeping us all in line. Thank you for all of the participants and the recipients who spoke up, and every one of you who share the urgency and understanding and appreciation of how important and timely this work is. We can't succeed without you. So we count on you for your support, for your advocacy, and really for your critical feedback as much. We don't presume to have all the answers, but we certainly hope to find the important ones together. Thank you.
Thank you.